Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sara Jane, and I am delighted today to be joined by Lynn K Russell. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us. And well, I'll explain what we're going to be sharing in a minute.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, welcome to the program. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Yes.
That's right. Our topic, Lynn is going to be sharing about beyond NDEs, or for those of you who are not sure what that is, near-death experiences. And let me share a little about Lynn, and then we can learn some more. Lynn studied religions most of her life in the search for truth. That spiritual quest culminated with the research she did for Dr. Jeffrey Long's book, Evidence of the Afterlife. In the process, she researched 2,500 cases and was so pleased by the learning that she wrote her book, The Wonder of You, that what near-death experience tells you about yourself. Although many reports of near-death experiences are available, most are of the one person's experience. While researching, she learned profound spiritual knowledge and answers to humans' age-old question, what is this all about? In addition, Lynn gained a strong interest in science approximately 50 years ago. That's when she saw her first galaxy and wanted to know much more. Now her interest in spirituality and science have joined together to the realization of our reality and the magnificence we each are. Lynn, thank you for joining us and talking about not just near-death experiences, but beyond them today.
Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
So let's start with share a little of your story. How did this become so important to you? What was that? How did it all start?
It started when I was about 8, and my grandfather died, and that really threw me. Not so much that he died, because we weren't very close, but that meant that I understood that death happened to everyone, and that someday I was going to die. And I was very frightened about that. That was not a good thing to me, So I was tight. I was nervous about it, and I went to my mom, who was an atheist. But I was raised in an atheist home, and so my mom said, like, I asked her, what happens after you die? And she said, you just disappear. Well, that was not the kind of answer to give an 8-year-old, because I was terrified. I didn't want to disappear. And so that got me interested in what happened after we died. And then I was going through some rough time in my own life, because as a child, I had been assessed as mentally slow. And so now I'm in my teens, and that's how I see myself. And so I treat myself that way, and the family treats me that way. And it really interfered with where I was going to go and my future and that kind of thing. So, so I started reading. I wanted to marry somebody who was going to be able to provide a good life for myself and whatever children we would have. And I thought, okay, I want a university graduate. Well, I was a grade 8 dropout. I didn't go past grade 8. So I thought, what grade 8er is going to want me? So I'm sorry, my phone's going. So what person who has had a university degree would want me, because I'm slow. And I thought, well, I can stay at home and I can look after kids and I can be a wife. I know how to do those things. And so but I thought I better start doing some reading. And so I went to the library and my sister's books from her schooling, her high school. And I was reading philosophy, psychology. I really loved it. It was just great, really quite enjoyed it. And so I started to show myself that I was a little more intelligent than I thought I was. Anyway, so many years later, three children and a marriage later, I found out that I was way above average with intelligence. So that's when I went back to school. But in my teens, I started also to read about all kinds of spiritual backgrounds and spirituality and religions. In those days, they didn't have the New Age kind of thinking. And so we're talking the 1950s. And so I started reading all the different religions to find out where did they come from? What made this happen? What was their background? And what did they get out of it? And how did they evolve to what they are today? And that brought me to my knowledge of spirituality that just never stopped. Every time I'd hear about a new way of thinking, I wanted to know about it and I would study it. And so then when the New Age came, and I took Course of Miracles, and I thought, oh my heavens, I was just so thrilled with all that I was learning. And so that was the beginning of my knowledge of spirituality and death, and trying to find out what happened when I died, and those kind of things. And then when I retired, and Dr. Long was looking for someone to do research for him, it was perfect. It was perfect timing. And so I just jumped right in there and did that. Yeah, it was good. I also went back to school, by the way, and became a family counselor in the end, and loved my job.
Did they teach you research?
No, I just did that on my own. It was good. It was good.
You have to study that. You can actually study being a researcher, can't you, these days?
Well, I guess I had my fingers in enough science that I knew what to look for and how it went about. And so, and what the research I did didn't require a course. People would send their death experiences to NDERF, and then after they tell about their experience and what happened to them, then they would have a huge questionnaire to answer. And some people complained about it because it was really long. And anyway, then I would tear that apart. How many people went to the light and how many people did this and how many people, telepathy and the hearing and all the things that happen, all the elements of the death experience. So I tore it apart and put it back together for Dr. Long. And in that process, I just learned so much. In the first couple of near-death experiences, first couple of hundred, I was getting the idea of what happened after we die. But after that, oh my goodness, then I started to see that deeper stuff that was coming. And that was what I really got into.
And that's really sort of what we're here to share or you're here to share with us is, I think many people have heard about near-death experiences, the experiences people, as you said, you mentioned the light. And sort of there are certainly a lot of those. And I remember reading a book, and I really don't know who it was by, but it was many years ago. It really was. It might have even been well back in the 80s. But, sort of, and yes, a fascination with it. And for me, I suppose I have no fear of death. Sort of, but you talked about the fact that it's beyond that experience. So it's those people who've had the near-death experiences, but they're still here. And, some of the stories that I read, it made so much difference to people's lives.
Yeah.
So you want to share a little bit sort of what you mean about beyond. So the beyond to me is
Mm-hmm.
still being here.
Okay. One of the big things that I realized was that when we die, each person has their own individual experience. There's no two death experiences that are exactly the same. And that is a very important point, and people don't get it. But let me tell you, one of the elements that happens, aside from the feeling of the love and the peace and, the warmth and all that beautiful stuff and comfort, is also the feeling of connection to everything. And they repeatedly talk about how they feel connected to everything in the universe. And that was just mind-boggling. Sorry, I'm blanking out. What was I talking about?
People feel connected to everything.
Oh, to one another, yes, and to oneness, to the oneness. And that's what led me to thinking about that we are far more. And then there were people who actually went into the light and became the light and actually became creators with the light. And those people, I realized they were saying that we are one with the source. We are source. We are not a part of or a piece of or, made by. We are the source experiencing this existence to feed back to the source the knowledge of being. Because if you can imagine living in a vacuum with nothing, no sounds, no sights, no nothing around you. Even if you were the greatest intelligence that ever was, and it would still be, it would you wouldn't know you were exist, or if you did, existence would have no meaning. It just wouldn't matter because there's nothing. And so the only way to correct that is to start to create. And so we create this experience. And so, in exactly the same way as we create this life, we also create our death experiences, and we are the creator. And I know there's some places that have a hard time with that, but knowing that means that we are far more magnificent than we have ever given ourselves credit for, and we can accomplish so much more. We really are just looking at a tiny little piece of ourselves when we could be looking at huge amounts of. We could do so much more.
And I've heard it sort of said that this life is experiential. It's about experiencing, sort of, and that we've had many lives, and each life is different. That we're here to. It's the black and white, the hot and the cold. It's the all of that because our soul, if that's what you wish to refer to it, lives in pure love with the all that is, whatever you perceive that to be. And our soul chooses to have experiences because it wishes to experience, it wishes to understand, it wishes. And yes, so as you said, we report back. We take the feelings of those experiences back because we've accepted that human form to be able to do that.
Yes. And so all that we are doing throughout our lives right now, this is being fed back to the source constantly, because there's never a time when we are not connected to the source. We are always connected. And so, yes, We experience and feed back to ourselves, actually, back giving ourselves the knowledge of being a human being or a world or a bug and all of the other kinds of life forms and universal forms that exist. We are experiencing that moment by moment by moment.
So, have you got anybody's or anything, a story of somebody that you can share? I know it's no names, whatever, but obviously potentially there's stories that have been shared anyway,
Mhm.
that can give a sense of what you're talking about here. So a story of somebody's experience of that has helped you to understand it.
Okay. Well, go to because NDERF is where I got all my stories. So if you're interested in going and listening to some of those, please go there so one of the stories is a woman by the name, well, she calls herself Hafur, and I may not be saying that right. It's Hafur, and I know that that's a place in the Middle East. So she's either, but sometimes people are named after places. So I don't know if that's her real name or not. But the point is that she was just a normal, ordinary housewife that she didn't think about this kind of thing at all. And she had a death experience, and she came away with so much knowledge and so much understanding that I really recommend people read her story on NDERF. There's another one that is not on NDERF, and it's Mellon Thomas Benedict. And he might still have his website up. Mellon Thomas, since that, has died, and he's no longer here. But his story is so astounding. So let me tell you a few things about it. So he had cancer, and he hated the world. He hated people. He did not like human beings. He wanted to be a recluse, and he didn't like them because he thought they were the cancer of the world. And I guess I can sort of understand that sometimes. But anyway, so then he had cancer, so he died of his cancer. And while he's leaving his body and he's moving up to wherever, he doesn't talk about a tunnel. Not everybody goes through tunnels, but wherever he was raising up, he said, wait a minute, I want to think about this. Stop. I want to think about it. And everything stopped, like literally stopped. And the fact that it stopped when he says a huge amount. So then he said, well, I think I want to know more about this. I want to decide whether I'm going to go or not. So he said, take me to the very beginnings of everything. And that's what happened. He went right back to the very, very beginnings. Now, he's not the only one. I've read a number of people that have gone back to the very beginning and of time and of the universe, and watching the universe evolve and develop, and feeling themselves to be part of that, and the development of all that, and even breaking up into souls. This was so amazing. So he has his experience, and now he's come back to, I guess, heaven. I don't know. He doesn't describe. So I'm guessing that he's just in wherever he is, and floating in. Anyway, he's with his guides. And so he says to his guides, so mankind can be saved. And the guide says, remember this. Everyone is magnificently beautiful. There are no evil souls anywhere. Never, no. And that blew him away. But that changed him. And so he did come back, and he was back for about 20 odd years before he finally died and left his knowledge. But one of the good things about him, uh, most people forget what they've learned and what they've seen, but he didn't. He remembered it all. He also got all knowledge, which is one of the things that happens. And it makes sense. If we are the source, when we go back to our home, we would have all knowledge because we did it. We're getting knowledge of our own knowledge back. So, and that's what people say over and over is, I knew this. How come I forgot it? Anyway, in with Nell Thomas Benedict, when his experience, when he brought his knowledge back, he didn't forget it. And so while he was here for those years, he had many, many inventions based on, and other people come back, they come back as they've never had a music lesson in their life and be able to write symphonies. And or one woman came back brilliant. She was just an average person, and she came back absolutely brilliant. And couldn't get enough into her, to feed the knowledge hole. So it's people like that. But the ones that really got to me were the ones who entered inside the light, saw how creation happened, and became a part of that. Those are my favorite ones.
Because we are all part of the whole.
Yeah.
But we seem to be brought up that we're as separate. There is the good, there is the bad, there is the whatever, every opposite that there can possibly be. There's the light, there's the dark, there's the evil, there's the same, sort of. And but I suppose it's the way we're brought up, isn't it? It's the beliefs we're brought up in.
Sure.
And we struggle to, even when we hear things, even when there've been the odd occasion I've sort of read something and I have felt it. I have felt it right in the core of my being. And I know the truth of it.
Yes.
And that is an amazing feeling. So I may never have had a near-death experience that I'm aware of. Oh no, because as a child I was scalded by a boiling milk coffee that went all over my face and sort of neck and the jumper that I was wearing. And this was back in 1959. Mm-hmm. So we're talking way back in an era that things weren't as progressed as they are today, so who knows? I also managed to drink paint stripper, and have to have my stomach pumped out. So, but I was so young for each of those. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think the nearest I came to death at that age was have a sister who was only 9 weeks old that died, and I was only 18 months old. So my awareness of death or death experiences I was way too young to but it's what we're taught. And I was brought up in the Catholic religion. And yes, it's the good, the bad. You can get forgiven for this, but you can't get forgiven for that. And and I suppose it was reading actually Neil Donald Walsh and the fact that we are souls of pure love, as you said, every single one of us is amazing, is magnificent, is a beautiful being of love and light.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
That's our reality. Isn't that magnificent?
Oh, it is. And it's being able to be in that and to trust ourselves. And it's very difficult because it's about unconditional love, but having so much love for people that our terminology would be tough love.
Oh, I don't like tough love.
but there are times, aren't there, then it's really important to say no to people for
Oh yes, absolutely. And also to experience difficulties in life. We need adversity. We would not. I'm sure most people today recognize that you cannot learn and grow without difficulties, and you know. So yes, we need difficulties in our lives to be able. And you know, another thing is that we plan our lives before we come. And we don't, I want to talk about that for a minute because so many people get confused. Our lives, we are source. So keep that in your mind. That is top on the bottom, on the list. So when we decide to come into, we're a soul and we decide to come into a life, then we create, we talk, maybe we talk with others and maybe we do it ourselves. I don't know. But we decide a goal that we want to accomplish in this life. And then we decide all of the elements that we need in order for us to accomplish that goal, because that goal is very, very important. So we create, or we do, plan our family and the people that are going to be in our lives, and that includes people who are in and out again. They're not, and so that's one of the things. The other thing is um, we create events and things that are going to happen to us, and we also create what we are going to look like, and what nationality, what country, what race, what are we going to be intelligent? Are we going to be slow? Are we going to be, are we going to have a disability? All of the things that are us, right down to our big toenail, if it had an event, if it connected to the goal. Okay. However, there is however to that, and that is that we also have 100% free will. Free will, totally. And so when we're in this life as a human being, we can say, I don't want to. And I don't know how many people would you know that just put their feet up and they go to work, they come home, that's it. They stop living. And so those people are probably not doing the goal, and will probably have to come back in another life to do it again. And all the same elements will be there for them to be able to accomplish it again. And it will keep doing that until they do the job. And that's the same with people with suicide. People who commit suicide still have to face whatever it is that they were avoiding. So whatever drove them to suicide, they will confront again and again and again until they work it through without killing themselves.
Yeah, the suicide thing is very difficult for me because I had a friend that committed suicide, and very sad. And we can think there were 200 odd people at his funeral, and he hadn't got anyone he felt he could turn to. But I also thought about how he committed suicide, because he jumped in front of a train and he didn't die immediately.
Ah,
He was trapped. So there was the train driver, there was the emergency services, the people that witnessed it. And thinking about what you were saying, and I actually believe as well, about our choices. And everybody agrees to be a part of those choices. And so I hear what you're saying. In one respect, I really do. There are those that have run away. And this is where you hear about walk-ins. Somebody obviously had a really important role and they've left, but there's a walk-in that's come in and taken over in their body. I don't know if you're aware of walk-ins, but I have had a couple of them on the program. But for him, I wondered whether that was the end he'd chosen because of what he went through. So, and all those people that were part of that experience, which, so maybe there's a two way of looking at it. There's the both. There's those who've really, that is the experience they've said they want to experience. That's how their life is finishing. And there are others that they leave, as you say, before they should, and they don't complete their role.
Yes, yes. And then but they do complete their role because, as I say, they come back and they come back and they come back until they've done it. Suicide's a little bit different, and they come back and do that anyway. But my point is that they're given choices. The first choice is that they can, if the body is still able to function, where they haven't done something to the body and it's just not going to work, then they can't come back. So then they have to go on. Then they've got two choices. They can either relive while they're at the spirit level, relive and relive and relive their experience over and over until they come to a conclusion that does not involve suicide. And then they also are given a choice to come back into another life with all the same elements and the same issues that they're going to face, that they're evading now, and do it that way. And many people will choose to come back to this life and finish it because they think, oh no, I don't want to go back as a baby and start over again.
Oh no, I've definitely heard people say, no, I've got to sort it out in this life. I'm not going through this again.
Yeah.
So have you yourself experienced a near-death experience?
Well, yes, no. I had an extremely small death experience in 1972. And I was very, very ill, and I was in bed, and I was really quite sick. And I felt myself leaving body, and that was fine, it was fine. I left my body, and then I was in a tunnel, and I didn't know how this happened because 1 second I was in my body, the next second I was in the tunnel. Though I didn't see the tunnel and go for it like some people. Anyway, I'm in this tunnel, and I've got my guide with me. I'm assuming he's a guide. It's a man. He's dressed as a minister or a priest or something. And I'm thinking, I don't belong to any church. What's he doing here? And he's laughing. He thinks it's such funny. Anyway, so we start going up in the tunnel, and I see this dot of light, the light. And so I thought, I didn't know what was happening. I had no idea. But all of a sudden, this very loud voice that was neither male or female, it was just a loud voice. It could be a low woman's voice or a high man's voice, said, "Take her back, it's not her time." And the guide beside me said, "But she died." And the voice said, "Take her back. She has much left to do." And that was it. And that was but I've had a number of quite a few psychic experiences from when I was 13. I had a favorite uncle and we were in a very unhappy home. It wasn't a very good home at all. And but this uncle, I absolutely loved him because he treated me respectfully and he didn't talk down to me as if I was slow. And so I really quite liked him. Anyway, we knew that he would die early because he had rheumatic fever when he was a child, and that's hard on the heart. Anyway, so he's in the hospital, but one morning I get up and there he is there was sort of like an entryway, and he's in a hospital bed, in the entryway, and he's propped up, and he just has nothing. He's like just blobby kind of look on his face, and I'm thinking, I wonder why Uncle Jim's here. But I avoided him. I didn't talk to him. I sort of crept around him because I didn't want to disturb him. It was very clear that he was not feeling very well. And so I just left him. And that happened for 3 days he was there. And on the third day or fourth, we come home, my sister and I come home for lunch, and Uncle Jim's gone. And my mother tells us that he died. Well, he died in a city that was like an hour's drive away. And yet I saw him repeatedly. I saw exactly what he would look like. I knew what he was wearing, and his feet were like this size. They were just huge. And I remember thinking about that they looked like balloons, So that was probably my first psychic experience when I was about 13. And then I just went from there. I don't know if you want to hear them all. But anyway, there is one I would like to tell about because it talks about the oneness. And I didn't know what it was talking about because at this point, this was in 1973, the following year, almost 1 year later, exactly. And from when I had my death experience. So I'm the children, I have two that are in school, kindergarten and grade 1. And then my youngest one is down having a nap. So the house is nice and quiet. And I had 3 experiences, and the house was always quiet and always calm, which is very rare in my house at that time. Anyway, so the first experience, I'm doing the dishes, and there's a window in front of the sink. And I look out, and there's an apple tree. And I've seen that tree I don't know how many times. And all of a sudden, I was the tree. And the tree was me. There was no separation. We were one. And I was one with the bug that was in the tree and the bird that was going to eat the bug. And, I was one with every kind of life form I could think of. And that was it. That was the end of it. It was very, very quick and gone. The second experience that happened, I was days later, I don't know how many, 3, 4, I'm wiping fingerprints off the walls in the hallway. And all of a sudden, I'm not seeing the wall. I'm seeing an atom with the nuclei and the electrons going around the outside. And then that expanded to our solar system and the sun and the planets going around. That expanded to our galaxy, and that expanded to multiple galaxies. It just was from micro to macro universe. And while I'm seeing this, I'm getting messages that this didn't just happen, that there was order and planning and an intelligence behind all of this. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool, And then I got a personal message, and it said, your being is intricately connected with the operation of the universe. Well, that blew me away. How could my being have anything to do with I'm a speck of dust when you think about the whole universe. So I sort of poo-pooed that. But the other thing, it sort of frightened me a bit. It was a little nerving because I didn't want to be different or odd or strange or weird. And I thought that if I had that, and anyway, what was I supposed to do with it? Did it mean I was going to have to do something? Okay, so then another day, a few days go by, and now I'm standing in the middle of my living room. I've picked up toys. I've got an armload full of toys. And all of a sudden, I feel this presence in a room with me. I can't see anything. All I see is my living room. But the more love, I can't describe the love. It was overwhelming, the love that was pouring to me from this being. And then I felt as if somehow I was connected to it, that somehow I was part of that. And I didn't understand that at all. And then I heard a message, and it said, "This is where you came from, and this is where you will return." And I was thrilled because I was so terrified of death. I mean, that was what this whole thing was about. So it was a very good message for me from the point of view of, but I didn't understand the part of oneness. I couldn't put that together at all. And then a few years later, this is, now I'm finished school, I've gone back to school, and I'm now a family counselor. And I'm working at the Alberta Children's Hospital in the family therapy program. And I hear a voice say, and the same voice, "I want to use you." That's what it said. And I went, "No way, get away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with this." I was terrified. "What do you want me for? Why me? Why not somebody who's, really into this kind of stuff?" Anyway, and so I was running around asking psychics and different people, what does he want? What am I supposed to do? Because I was terrified that I would mess up, and so I really had a hard time with that one. And so nothing, no answers, nothing, absolutely nothing. And then one day, now 4 years later, 4 years, I'm in a restaurant with my daughter and her girlfriend, and I'm just sitting there listening to them being silly teenagers, and I hear the voice again, and it says, "I still want to use you, And that's exact words, that verbatim. And I said, "Okay, fine, but I have nothing left to give," because I'd had a fire, our house had a fire, and I'd been ill, and I had 3 teenagers at home. I was a mess. And the voice came back and said, "Don't worry, I'm preparing you now." And that was it.
So really, all of that, in its own way, was preparing you for the research that you did and everything that you learnt.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so. I think it was preparing me for what I'm doing now. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Lynn, this has been brilliant. And our 45 minutes is nearly up.
Oh, that's too bad.
But before we close, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think you would like to share? And we will share your email address as well. Not your email address, sorry, your website address. So is there anything that you feel we haven't touched on?
Not really. The big ones we've touched on. One of the things that I could share is my proof of why I say we are one. And that people talk about when they have a death experience, they talk about being able to move through thought. Well, yeah, because they're one entity moving within itself. And they have all knowledge, which I've already talked about. So, and they can telepathically communicate. Well, of course, because you're talking to yourself. So, and I think that psychic abilities are very reasonable and make perfect sense because we're talking to ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I channel many mythical beings. So I have messages from them that I should have shared on a monthly basis. And there are times when I think, well, is this me or is this them? And of course, it's us. It's the whole, it's the one, the all, the individual. But no, that's brilliant. Thank you. So your website is Lynn, Lynn K Russell .com. And so I've just put that in the chat. And I will, if you're watching this on the YouTube video, I'll make sure that it's also under the video, so that if you want to sort of learn a little bit more about Lynn, connect with her, please go to her website. Now, what did you say that website was called?
NDERF.
Right.
Near Death Experience Research Foundation.
Right. NDERF.
Yes.
I'll try and remember to put that up as well, so
Yeah.
people can look that up. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing. It's certainly something I've been very open to for a lot of years, and sort of the fact that you were part of research, sort of for a book that was written to do with this, and that it touched your life in such a way. It's amazing, and gave you insights. It's amazing, and thank you for coming and sharing some of those with us. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate chatting with you and getting to know you a little better.
Bless you, sweet soul. Next week, we've got a today's conversation with Scott Holmes and our little team. And our topic is I am, which I think fits very nicely with the fact that we're all one. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you all. Do join us again. Take care. Be safe. Stay well. Namaste, sweet souls.